Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about enabling narcissistic abuse. If you know a narcissist, you definitely know someone who's an enabler to the narcissist. You might even be an enabler and not even realize it. The last video, I detailed all the different symptoms about NPD and why I think my mother has that disorder. In this video, I want to talk about how my dad is an enabler to my mother's NPD and why that's important. So stay tuned for the rest of the video. Okay, so my last video was a 3-part series on NPD. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch the beginning one. Start with part 1, go all the way through part 3. It doesn't take more than an hour to go through, but it'll help us all to be on the same page. I also want to answer a few comments that I have. Most of my videos, I have people asking me the question, are you still in contact with your parents? Are your parents disfellowshipped? Are you disfellowshipped? It gets a little tedious to answer those questions every time, so I want to preface this video by saying, I'm no longer in contact with my parents as of this year. That was my decision that I made this year. My parents are active Jehovah's Witnesses that live 300 miles away from me. I'm a former Jehovah's Witness, but I was never disfellowshipped since I was never baptized. Let's get started with the video. Okay, so this video is going to be all about my dad. I did research when I was doing this video about narcissistic personality disorder enablers, and it was actually really difficult to find really good resources about enablers of NPD. There's a lot of resources out there about alcoholism enabling, and there's a lot of resources about enabling borderline personality disorder, but there's virtually no resources out there about enabling narcissistic personality disorder. There are a handful of videos on YouTube, but as far as reputable websites, I was kind of at a loss. So basically what I did was I just made a list of things that I think are enabling behaviors that my dad has that enables my mom and makes her behaviors worse. So this isn't really going to be quite as scientific or professional as the last one, I guess. This is just kind of my thoughts on what it takes for someone to be an enabler. So when I was discussing with other people about faults that my dad has, it really helps me clear my mind to talk with other people before I start making the videos. And what I found was that it was actually really difficult to find people who were willing to talk poorly of my dad. He's actually such a really nice guy. I have to get that out there, that he's actually very likable and very friendly. I had a hard time getting other people to open up about the things that bothered them about him. And it's just because he's so friendly. I think that the problem is that he's actually really attention-starved because he spends so much time attending to my mom's emotions and not really giving himself a second thought, that I actually think he's really starved for affection. And I think that when he goes about town to the grocery store, he makes friends with everybody that he comes in contact with. And I think that that's a direct result of the fact that he doesn't get enough attention at home. Another thing that my dad does is that he's always trying to lighten the mood. He's very jokey. He has a really good sense of humor. He's really friendly. But it almost comes off as if he's policing your mood when he does it. I think he spends a really, extensive amount of time policing my mom's mood and trying to decide whether or not she's going to be upset about something or predict when she might get upset about something. So he spends a lot of time joking around about things, and I think that that's a direct result of the fact that he spends so much time walking on eggshells that he always has to be ready to kind of whip out a joke and lighten the mood. But it comes off as disingenuous because he usually jokes around when my mom is upset about something, or he thinks she might get upset about something, or directly after she's gotten upset about something. So even though he kind of has a playful spirit to begin with, he definitely makes a show of joking around a lot more directly after my mom gets upset. So it becomes kind of annoying because you feel like he's expecting you to always be happy and that you're not really allowed to be upset in his presence, which is very annoying because I do think it's healthy to experience negative emotions as long as we don't dwell on them for too long. But it's almost as if he expects everyone to be in a good mood all the time. And I think that that comes from my mom never being in a good mood. And so he wants everyone to be in a good mood when he's away from her. Going back to the fact that he's always making jokes to lighten the mood, that's something that his grandkids frequently complain about. My sister has taken issue with the fact that her kids feel uncomfortable around my parents. And my parents take great offense to the fact that my sister's children don't really feel comfortable around them. But I think that they can kind of feel the mood. They're, they don't have the wool pulled over their eyes. They're pretty aware of the type of people that my parents are. And I think that it makes them really uncomfortable that my dad's always trying to put them in a better mood. Like he's not allowing them to feel upset about the things that my mom does. And I think that that even makes them uncomfortable, even at a young age. So I think that that needs to be spoken about too. One of the things that really bothers me about him too is that he's completely overly sympathetic to my mom. He takes on whatever burden she takes on. If she's upset about something, he then becomes upset about whatever she's upset about. His emotions are directly correlated with her emotions. He pretty much never brushes her off. He pretty much never says, oh, well, that's her problem, or, we feel differently about something. For some reason, they feel like they always have to be on the same page emotionally. And that means that he usually bends to her will as far as being upset goes. If she's upset, he becomes upset. If she's in a good mood, he pretty generally is in a good mood. He usually doesn't put her in a bad mood. She usually puts him in a bad mood. Another thing that I thought about when I was trying to figure out what to put on this list was that he kind of expects everyone to excuse my mom's behaviors the way that he does. And he definitely acts like it's unreasonable to set limits on the things that she does and the way that she acts. It's really difficult to explain what I mean about that. I think it will be better to just tell you a story. So one of the ways that I think that he expects us to excuse her behavior is that I think he's always kind of hoping that when she gets upset, other people will apologize to her. Okay, so this story that I'm about to tell takes place in March of 2011. So it's been a little more than 8 years since it happened. It was directly before my middle sister got married. In fact, I was up there visiting for her bridal shower and her bachelorette party. We decided to do that about a month before her wedding. So I went to where my parents live on my own. I took a plane there. My husband had to work. He had just gotten a brand new job, so he stayed back home, and I went to go visit my parents. My sister's fiance was also working at that time, so she decided that she would come spend the night at my parents' house too. So it was basically the first time in a while that all four of us were at the house by ourselves. So it was my mom, my dad, my middle sister, and me all staying at my parents' house for a few days. So it was almost kind of like when I was a teenager, between ages 13 and 16. That was also the same people that lived in the same house. So it was kind of nice because I didn't really get to experience a lot of, celebration when I was a kid. So it was kind of nice being back at my parents' house with my sister. And I actually was having quite a good time. So I was almost 24 years old. I hadn't lived with my parents for about 6 years, and I'd been married for almost 5 years when this story takes place. So what happened was that we decided that we were going to order pizza for dinner. There's a small pizza place that's around the corner from my parents' house. It doesn't take very long to drive there. And since it's a local place, we decided we would order pizza from there. Well, it was a pretty busy night because I think it was a Friday, and they had quite a few orders going on. So, usually you get your pizza within 30 minutes or so, but it had been more than 30 minutes, and we were kind of starting to get restless because we were hungry, and my mom had started to get upset. So for about 15 or 20 minutes, she was really, really complaining about the fact that we hadn't gotten our pizza yet. And it started to get very annoying because we were all hungry, but we're all adults. You just learn to deal with things. And if the pizza takes 45 minutes instead of 40 minutes, you just deal with it until it gets there. So we were trying to be patient and waiting, but my mom is harping on the fact that we have not gotten our pizza yet. And her major source of contention is the fact that the pizza place is very close. So she was thinking that it shouldn't take very long to get our pizza, considering we live fairly close to the pizza place. And it really rubbed me the wrong way because she wouldn't let it go. So after about 15 minutes of her very loudly and continuously complaining about it, I finally got annoyed enough that I spoke up. So I said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter how close you are to the pizza place, they take the orders in the order that they're taken in. If you order a pizza before someone else, you get it before them. It doesn't matter if you live farther away. So our proximity to the pizza place has no bearing on how quickly we get our pizza. It depends on how many people order pizza before us. But she didn't like that. That rubbed her the wrong way, and she got very upset, and she didn't know what to say, so she just stormed up to her room, and she slammed the door, and she left us all sitting in the living room. Well, a couple of minutes after that happened, the pizza ended up getting there, so my sister and I go ahead, and we start eating our food, but my dad doesn't. He goes upstairs to have a conversation with my mom. Well, he's up there for quite some time. He's up there, I would say 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And so we were just sitting there. We had already finished our food and we were watching TV. Well, my dad comes down the stairs and he's, all puffed up like, a big tough guy that he's going to come solve my mom's problems. And he comes walking down the stairs and he kind of stands with his hands on his hips in front of the TV so we can't see the TV anymore. And he puts a finger up in front of his face and he tells me and my sister, "You're gonna go apologize to your mom." And it was really kind of unbelievable. I remember being shocked for a few moments and just kind of staring at him. And then I remember looking at my sister who was sitting on the couch next to me, and we both just burst out laughing. It was pretty amusing that he thought that he could tell us what to do. Because like I said, I was 24. I hadn't lived at home for years, and I had been married for almost 5 years. So I was not used to being bossed around by that point. It had been so long since I lived in their house, I wasn't expecting to be bossed around as if I was 15 again. But that's what he did. And it was very amusing for a moment. And after the giggles kind of wore off, I think I was the first one to speak up. But I told him that, I was almost 24 years old, that it had been years since I lived under their roof, and that I wasn't going to let him tell me what to do. And then I distinctly remember telling him that if my mom was going to act like a child, that I was going to treat her like a child, because she was throwing a tantrum like a 2-year-old's, and therefore she deserved to be treated like a 2-year-old, which, the way their house is shaped, I'm sure she could hear what I was saying about her. And I don't think that she took kindly to that. But my sister also piped up, and she said something along the lines of, "I've already had one marriage and divorce, and I'm fixing to get married a second time. I really don't think that I should have to listen to what you're going to say." And she brought up the fact that she had her own apartment, and that if we weren't welcome in their home anymore, that I would pack my bag and we would go to her house. And I think that kind of shocked him, and he didn't know what to say. So at that point, he kind of just let it go, and he went back upstairs. Somehow he managed to calm my mom down, and eventually she did come back downstairs and eat and watch TV with us before going up to bed. So that's just kind of one example of how he expects people to excuse her behavior. And he definitely expects people to apologize to her to smooth things over. He's the kind of person who doesn't like to make waves. So, and he knows that she won't apologize. So I think he definitely is always hoping that other people will apologize for upsetting her. Another thing that he does is that he always justifies my mom's actions and the way that she feels. He's always trying to get me to see where she's coming from. I've had him on more than one occasion say things like, wouldn't that upset you? And he said things like, can't you see why she's upset? Or, why'd you make her angry? Or, you guys are just trying to piss her off, or things like that. He's always trying to get us to understand where she's coming from, even when we think she's being unreasonable. Another thing that really bothers me is that he's very permissive, especially when it comes to my mom. He was always pretty permissive with us and kind of let us do what we wanted. He always kind of let us eat what we wanted to eat. And he was always, handing us money behind our mom's backs, a couple of dollars here and there. But he's really, really permissive to my mom. He really doesn't have boundaries. And I'm not sure if that's a result of being around my mom, who's always breaking boundaries, or if he just didn't have very many boundaries to start with. But he definitely isn't good with boundaries. He never reins her in when she's throwing a fit. I've never seen him set limits with her. I've never seen him tell her that she can't act a certain way or that something is inappropriate. He pretty much just lets her act however she wants to whoever she wants. And as far as I know, he never tells her what she can and cannot do. A story to go along with that one of being really permissive with my mother is that back when I was about 12 years old, I think it was July of 1999, we went on a family vacation. We went from New Mexico to California. We visited San Diego. Then we went to Las Vegas, Nevada. And then we went to Denver, Colorado. And then we went back down to Clovis, New Mexico at the end of the trip. So it was a fairly long trip. It took a couple of weeks. We drove the whole way. And I remember that we had gotten a hotel in San Diego, and we were kind of just hanging around and relaxing after we had been in the car for so many days in a row. And we decided that we were going to go get dinner. So my parents had discussed what restaurant they wanted to go to. And at the time, there wasn't really GPS system. Everybody was still using paper maps. And there was construction around San Diego because it was a big city. So we were having a hard time getting to the restaurant. And my parents were arguing about the directions. They started to get into an argument about what street they were going to take or what exit they missed. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they were having an argument and it got really heated. And my mom got out of the car. And at the time, people didn't have cell phones really. I mean, it wasn't very common for people to have cell phones, especially since we were kind of a low-income family. So it was really scary when she decided to leave. She just got out of the car and she started walking. And I think it scared my dad even more than it scared us, because I think he realized as an adult the full scope of not being able to get a hold of her. So instead of going on to the location that we were supposed to eat at and, just continuing on with his day and feeding his hungry children, everything came to a screeching halt. He, pulled off of the interstate, followed my mom wherever she was going, and he begged and pleaded with her. And I remember thinking that I was very hungry and that we had been in the car such a long time trying to get my mom to come back into the car. And I remember him getting out of the car and yelling, and they were gesturing wildly and trying to just, beg and plead with her to get back in the car so we could continue on to the restaurant. So that is one one story. I don't remember if we continued on to the restaurant after that or if we went back to the hotel, but he definitely put her needs above the needs of his children. It was very upsetting that we all had to sit there hungry while she was stark raving mad about whatever she was mad about, and we all had to sit there and be uncomfortable while she threw a fit, basically. And my dad definitely exacerbates that because since he allows that behavior and he does follow her around and try to calm her down, he's not allowing her the natural consequences of her own actions. He's, making excuses for her and buffering the consequences that she would naturally face doing that to someone else. Another thing that my dad is really bad about is false promises. I don't know if he makes false promises to everyone, but he definitely has made a lot of false promises to me. I remember a few years ago, I had just moved to Amarillo, Texas, and so it was the spring of 2008, and I was 20 years old, and we were living in Amarillo, and we only had one car, and I wanted to start working. My husband had a job, but I didn't have a job, and we only had one car. So I wanted to start working, and I thought that would be easier if we had two cars. Well, my dad had called and I was having, a chat with him about different things that were going on. And I told him that I found it difficult to look for a job considering we didn't have two cars. And he told me that he had been looking for another car and that he had always kind of felt bad about the fact that he bought my sister's cars when they were teenagers, but that he never bought me a car. So he made me a promise that he would give me the car that he was currently driving as soon as he bought another car. And so I was really excited about that because I was going to learn to drive stick shift. And I thought that it was really exciting because I never had my parents buy me a car before. So I kind of told everybody. And after that, it was a while before I heard from him. And I expected that he would call me back and let me know. I didn't expect it to be instantaneous, but it was kind of radio silence after that point. He kind of stopped calling as much. I think he was kind of embarrassed about the fact that he really couldn't just give me his car. And I think that what happened is that he had talked to my mom about it and she had kind of shut the whole idea down. So I think that he has good intentions when he makes promises, but in the end, his promises usually fall through. He doesn't usually do the things that he says he's going to do if my mom has a problem with them. And he always has to double check with her before he makes a decision. And so frequently what happens is that she disagrees with his decision. And then in the end, they end up doing what she wanted to do, which is directly opposite of what he's promised someone. So that's actually kind of hurtful. And this isn't an old problem that he has stopped doing. It's even a problem that as recent as last fall, he's done to me. This past November of 2018, we had been doing some repairs on our property, and he promised me and my husband that he would give us several $100s to finish the projects. He told us that he wanted to give us that gift so that we could go ahead and finish our projects and we wouldn't have to worry about finishing them over several pay periods. But that was another thing, is that I didn't hear from him for weeks after that, and another radio silence bit, and that never came to fruition. So I think that he definitely needs to be more careful about either making promises before he talks to my mom or about following through with his promises if he tells people that he's going to do something. The last thing that I have on the list is apologizing for my mom, even though she isn't sorry. I've gotten several apologies from my dad about my mom's behavior. Meanwhile, she was stark raving mad and definitely not sorry for what she did. He always feels the need to apologize for her. And it becomes really, really disingenuous when you know that your mother isn't even sorry for what she did, and yet you're still getting an apology from your dad. He definitely lives in a delusional world, but I think that it's actually almost kind of worse. I almost have more problems with my dad than I do with my mom, because since you know that he recognizes that she's abusive, but he allows it to continue, it almost hurts worse because he does have some degree of awareness that what she's doing is abusive, and he doesn't do anything to stop it. I think he spent so much time trying to avoid being the target of her anger that he allows anyone to be pushed under the bus, which is actually kind of scary because that means that he doesn't have your back. He's not someone that you can trust, even though he comes off as a very friendly and trustworthy person. I have a few little remarks about the fact that a lot of the problems that I have with my mom can be excused by her mental illness. And even though you can't 100% excuse the things that she does, you do tend to make an excuse when someone has a disability or a disease of some sort. And since I know that she's mentally unhealthy, I do tend to make that excuse for her that she's so delusional and so wrapped up in her problems that she doesn't realize how detached from reality she is. But the very fact that my dad apologizes for the things that she does means that he is, at least on some level, aware of the fact that what she's doing is wrong and abusive. And that to me is almost scarier than someone who doesn't realize that they're being abusive, because he definitely realizes that she shouldn't be acting the way that she does, and yet he allows her to continue to act that way. So my closing remarks are that if you know someone who's an enabler, if you know someone who's a narcissist, or if you yourself are enabling a narcissist, please seek help. You can't do this on your own. But the very first step is recognizing that you or your loved one has a problem. I'm not sure what I'm going to make my next video on, but if you guys have any suggestions, put it down in the comments. I'd be happy to do any research into anything anybody wants to talk about. But I will be recording videos this week, hopefully get a few up next week. So like I said, just let me know. I also want to throw a shout out to all my new subscribers. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. I really didn't expect to have so many subscribers so quickly, but I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm also really excited that you guys are putting a lot of stuff in the comments because you're asking questions that I hadn't really considered. So I'm really, really excited that you guys are commenting. I'm really feeling the love from the comment section. You guys are so sweet. By and large, the comments are just so sweet across the board. So, yeah, thank you guys for listening to my story, and stay tuned because I'm going to be talking more about my childhood. So, thanks.